Hello and welcome, TBU fans. I'm your host, King L5, and today I'm bringing you my Week 6 matchup against RTK, coach of the Portland Timbers. And you can see his team on the right. I'm not going to read it out to you, but I assume you can read. Let's see, get into the team of 6 I decided to bring. I went for a very fat team this week because he has a very hard time breaking my defensive core of 5 Pokemon. So, yeah. First off, I have my Tangrowth making its second appearance after week 1. With the leftovers, Giga Drain, HP Ice, Leech Seed, and Knockoff. This is basically there so I never lose to Zygarde 50%, and I never lose to Metagross. It's just a nice defensive check to a lot of his team, and there isn't much he can do to outright kill this thing. The closest thing he has to that is Darmanitan, which I have checks for, of course. Just nice coverage with Leech Seed allows me to stay healthy and hit his team for some nice damage. Next up is my Corsola, basically my designated switch into Darmanitan, as Flare Blitz otherwise just kind of nukes me. So having this 4x resist with the Rocky Helmet and the Regenerator is very nice for that. I can also scout the Earthquake, as Earthquake from a Scarf Darmanitan, which I feel is the most likely set, will only do about 60%, and then I can easily regen that off and go into my Lando T, get the Intimidate, and U-turn for some momentum. So it's a nice pivot, just mid-ground play in general, that can't really work out too poorly for me. The worst that happens is he gets off about 27% after regen, which is not a big deal. So yeah, Recover, Scald, Stealth Rock, and Ice Beam. Ice Beam is there just in case I cannot let Zygarde 50% set up at all, in case my Tangrowth goes down and my Lando T gets severely weakened. Just in case I decide to put Ice Beam on there. Really, I only need Scald for this matchup. The Finny, it would be nice to have Power Gem to hit that a little bit harder, but I'm not going to be doing too much damage to it anyway, so having the Ice Beam to hit the Zygarde for a considerable amount of damage, as I felt like that was more worth it. I also considered maybe Toxic on there, but Toxic isn't too useful as I already had the Toxic Spikes, as we'll get into later. Anyways, here I have my next Pokemon, Lando T, bringing a very defensive set this week, just like 4 of my other Pokemon. Pretty much max HP, max defense, with a little bit spread out in other stats just because I can. A little bit of speed creep just because I feel like if he's going to speed creep anything, it's going to be Lando T on my team. So yeah, Earthquake, U-turn, HP Ice, and Protect. Protect allows me to get more leftovers on anything I want. I can just click Protect, maybe scout moves like a Scarf Darmanitan. I can scout moves, Scarf Mienshao, I can scout moves. I can Protect on a potential Z move from the Aerodactyl if I need to. Anyways, Earthquake is just nice stab. U-turn gives me momentum, which is nice. Getting momentum into my Sharpedo is going to be very threatening to him, of course. Sharpedo is a god. But HP Ice is there for the Zygarde 50%, and it also hits the Aerodactyl, which is a nice bonus, so I'm not completely walled by that thing. But yeah, that's my Lando T set with the leftovers. I probably mentioned that, but yeah. Next up is my Garbodor, which is going to be my Mienshao check, pretty much. That's pretty much all it's here for, because otherwise Mienshao just bodies me. As well as, well, I guess that's not the only thing it's here for. It's also here for the hazards. T-Spikes just destroys them, unless he brings Slow Volley Poison, which I do expect, of course, for that very reason. The Gunk Shot is just nice, powerful stab. Spikes is another form of hazard to help chip at his team, as with a more defensive team, I am kind of looking to have the hazards do the work for me, as my only real offensive presence is uninvested Florges, uninvested Lando, uninvested Tang, and my Sharpedo. The other 2 Pokemon, Corsola and Garbodor, don't really have too much offensive presence. So overall, this team is pretty weak, which is why I am relying on the hazards to do a lot of the work for me and get chip damage on everything to put everything in range of my Mega Sharpedo. But anyways, Pain Split on this thing is pretty nice for some recovery, as I don't want to fully rely on Florges Wish Passing, because that's not the most reliable thing in the world to keep my Garbodor healthy. So having the extra recovery option on there is nice. Yeah, so that's pretty much all for my Garbodor set, just max HP, max defense to take on Mienshao as best as possible. And then we have Florges, max HP, max defense, much like my other Pokemon, Wish, Protect, Moonblast, and Heal Bell. So with a fat team like this, definitely the threat of status from particularly maybe a toxic Umbreon is really threatening to my team. I can't really do much to break it, as if I am unable to get off the toxic spikes, that thing can kind of sit on my whole team, barring Florges. So having this thing around to Moonblast it with a very high natural special attack stat with a super effective stab is very nice. Heal Bell as well for the toxics that it might be able to throw out versus my Lando, Tangrowth, and Corsola. I don't want those things to be whittled every turn. Anyways, that's going to be my set. It does take on the special attackers that he has even without investment, so I felt no need to invest in special defense as Tapu Fini and what's his other one? Electivire. Those both cannot touch Florges anyways, and max physical defense allows me to take on the Zygarde with this thing, giving me a third check to that thing, as well as things like the Aerodactyl and the Mienshao. Just take those things on as best as possible. And next up is my only offensive Pokemon on the team. That's going to be my Mega Sharpedo. Kind of what I'm looking for is to set up everything for a Mega Sharpedo sweep in the end. Just weaken everything down with hazards and just chip damage, and then send it in and just kill everything. So that's basically my game plan. I'm gonna have my Crunch, Waterfall, Aqua Jet, and Poison Jab. I could have had what other move was I thinking of? Ice Fang for the Zygarde 50, but that Zygarde is not a threat to my team. If any team had a bad matchup for Zygarde, it would be this team. It cannot break me. The worst thing that can happen is if he's like toxic, subtoxic, and even then that's not a big deal because I have the Florges Heal Bell and that would be walled. So Ice Fang is not necessary at all for Zygarde. I have plenty of things to deal with it, and Poison Jab, which was the other option I was considering and decided to go for, actually has a chance to 2-hit KO max HP Tapu Fini after hazards, so having that option is very nice, as Tapu Fini would conventionally wall Mega Sharpedo, but having the tech Poison Jab could be nice in a certain scenario, like say if the Tapu Fini is healthy and I want to nab that thing on the switch-in, or if it's just weakened and I want to pick it off. Having the Poison Jab is very nice. And yeah, so that's pretty much all for my team, and let's get right into the battle. Alright, so as you can see, he decided to bring the Electivire, the Aerodactyl, the Metagross, Zygarde 50%, Silvally, and the Tapu Fini. So, very interesting team he decided to bring. No Mienshao, which is fantastic for me, and no Darmanitan, which is also fantastic for me. I decided to lead off with my Lando T, as it has a fairly good matchup versus pretty much everything, and I can just U-turn out on the vast majority of his Pokemon and just get momentum. And he actually leads off with the Electivire. Now I can chew an HP Ice if I need to, however not if he's a boosting item like Life Orb. So what I am going to do is make the safe play and switch out into my Florges as he makes the play into the Aerodactyl. Now here, I have a pretty free Moonblast. Even if he decides to go into his Metagross, that thing doesn't have recovery and I can just chip it down. Here he actually makes a misclick and goes for the Defog, which is very unfortunate, and it does mean that his Aerodactyl will be weakened for the future of this game. So I get off about 50% and he reveals the leftovers, which means this is a more defensively oriented Aerodactyl. Although it's not too bulky based on the damage, it probably will have the Roost Defog option, and then Tapu Fini might be Calm Mind or something, is what I'm thinking. Anyways, I'm going to go for the Moonblast here, as he does make the switch out into the Metagross, and that damage is actually a crit, and it reveals that he basically has very little bulk. So here, I can go out into my Tangrowth, which is a full-on counter to this thing. There's not much he can do, unless he was like Specs Psychic. That might be able to break through my Tangrowth, but that's pretty wild. And he does set up his rocks here, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go for the Leech Seed, as he doesn't have a grass type to be immune to that thing, so it's pretty free to just throw it out, and he does reveal the Silvally Poison, which is kind of what I expected, but he does reveal it here. As I get off the Leech Seed, nice chip damage, and from everything on his draft, this is the thing that's going to be the most difficult to switch into. However, with the Leech Seed up, I can pretty freely go out into my Garbodor and take pretty much nothing from any attack. So I'm going to go into my Garbodor, take the Rocks and the Ice Beam, and this damage that you're about to see reveals that he is a very offensive Silvally, I believe, if I remember the calc. I think that was a very offensive Silvally, so especially offensive at least. So I'm going to get the Leech Seed in here. I'm going to lay up a hazard because having Rocks on my side and giving him a bunch of free switches allows him a lot of leeway to kind of just switch around and chip at my team with the hazard. So I do want to at least match his hazards 1 for 1. So I do set up my spikes. No point going for the toxic spikes at this point because Silvally is alive and it can easily just switch in on a lot of Pokemon and remove the T-spikes. Although it would be nice to force the switch in, getting up the spikes is a little bit more helpful in the long run. So I'm going to go into my Tangrowth here, which is pretty much a full-on counter to this Zygarde as he goes for the Substitute. And here this next turn, I'm just going to go with the HP Ice as it's a no drawback play. He doesn't really have a reason to switch out here. The best he can do is go for a Toxic, and so yeah, Toxic isn't an issue because I do have the Heal Bell on my Florges. So yeah, he does go for the Coil here, which I find a very interesting play. I'm definitely going to be packing the HP Ice on this Tangrowth specifically for the Zygarde, as that's basically my easiest way to deal with it is with an HP Ice Tangrowth. So I don't really understand why he would Coil rather than anything else, but I don't think it really mattered because if his only attacking moves is like 1000 Arrows E-Speed, then any damage he does is generated off anyways, so it doesn't really matter too much. But I felt like I guess Coil was okay, banking on the fact that I would not have HP Ice, and if I don't have HP Ice then he could set up to +6, potentially get something out of it, so I guess that play wasn't too bad. But here he's going to go out and use Metagross, so I'm going to make the offensive play and go for the knockoff, predicting a switch out, and what was going through my mind was basically he's most likely going to switch, but if he is going to stay in, it's because he is Camouflage on his Zygarde, which is a pretty cool tech. If you don't know, it would change it to a normal type, which means HP Ice would be normal effective, but he can't really set up a sub on my HP Ice, so if he did have the Camouflage, he would go for it there, and I could get rid of the leftovers, which would allow me to 1v1 it with the Tangrowth anyways. But anyways, he does go into his Metagross, reveal his Sugar Berry as I knock it off, and then pivots into his Silvally Poison on the next knockoff. Now here, Ice Beam does a lot to my Tangrowth. I don't want it to be too weak, so I'm going to go into my floor just predicting the Ice Beam. And then I was planning to pivot out into my Garbodor on the multi-attack, but he does decide to go for the Parting Shot instead, which is a fine play. It drops my offenses and gets him out of there. Now he can go out into his Aerodactyl, and he is, I believe, just going to take this as an opportunity to get rid of the hazards, which I don't know if I agree with here. Just kind of wait for the turn to get here. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but he is going to defog here and get rid of the spikes, but more importantly for me, he's going to get rid of the rocks for me. And I feel like the best way for him to pressure my team is to force a lot of switches and get momentum and keep his own hazards up. So I find that very interesting that he would willfully get rid of his own hazards there, because while Metagross can set them up relatively easily versus my team, it is fairly low health, so he's not going to be able to get too many opportunities to set up rocks anymore. So yeah, here I believe I'm going to switch out into my Corsola. Do I? I don't remember. But the Finny does come in. I actually don't remember what I did here, so I guess we're going to find out together. I do switch out. Oh, I remember, I go into my Garbodor. This was to heal it up with the Wish in the Air, as the Aerodactyl could not do any damage, and at this point, Garbodor was the only thing on my team that was actually damaged. And I had made a lot of progress versus him, like his Metagross was at very low health, etc. So healing up the Garbodor basically puts me back at square one, but he has a lot of damage on his Pokemon. Anyways, he did go for a taunt on my Spike, making me God play. Stunt on me. But here what I'm going to do is I'm going to double out into my Florges. I don't really know what I was expecting too much, but he does go into his Metagross, which is pretty bad for me. I am forced out. And he is going to get up his rocks here, no doubt about it. but I can take this as an opportunity to go into my Corsola and trade hazards, as I said earlier, I do not want hazards up on my side unless I have hazards on his side. Because if the hazard game is even, I feel like I can definitely outlast him with my defensive core, but if he has rocks and I don't, then it's a little bit more tricky. Here he's going to go for the Meteor Mash on my Corsola, going to do 0 damage because Corsola is hard-bodied, and he's going to take the helmet and I get up my rocks. And here, if he stays in to attack me, he's going to die to the helmet, so there's no real reason for him to stay in, as he wouldn't do any damage anyway. So I'm just going to go for the Scald, predicting a switch out, and get some chip damage on anything. He does go into the Tapu Fini, which Scald is not going to do very much damage to, of course. It's only going to do about 8% if it's max HP. But yeah, so just a little bit of chip damage canceling out the leftovers that he's going to reveal at the end of this turn. But anyways, just getting off a little bit of damage, mostly from the hazards on the Tapu Fini is nice. Here I'm going to switch out, get my Regenerator, and go into my Florges, as it's my best option versus this Tapu Fini. Yes, he can taunt Nature's Madness me and all that, but I can go for Moonblast and basically 1v1 this thing, as with the leftovers, it's going to be very difficult for him to put me in a range where Moonblast or Surf will be able to knock me out, and I expect him to have Ice Beam for my Tangrowth, so he is kind of locked into a 4 move slot syndrome there. He reveals the taunt. If he's Calm Mind, he can potentially 1v1 me, but since he already revealed Nature's Madness, I don't really expect to see a Calm Mind, as that's not really a set that anyone in their right mind would run, being Calm Mind, Nature's Madness, taunt, mono attacking. But anyways, here I do get the special attack drop, which is very nice. It means that once I am whittled with the Nature's Madness, it's going to be very difficult for him to actually finish me off with a stab attack. So that's pretty nice. I can just spam Moonblast here, as he doesn't have the greatest switch-ins, as Metagross is only real Fairy resist outside of Silvally, which is also pretty weakened. Both of them are pretty weakened, so coming in on hazards and a Moonblast would be very ouch for them. So I don't really see the point of him switching any of those in directly, as those two are very important. Metagross to get up rocks if he ever wants to defog again, which I highly doubt, and Silvally is his best way of pressuring my team. So I don't feel like he would ever risk those things. But here he actually goes into his Silvally on the hazards and the Moonblast, so very interesting play there. I don't feel like it was his best play, because Silvally was pretty much the only thing that could threaten my team, and now it's at about 25%, and if he switches out, that's going to be 12 after hazards. So I really don't agree with letting this thing take damage from my Moonblast, but regardless, it's the decision that he decided to make. Here I'm going to go into my Garbodor on the multi-attack, get off some Rocky Helmet Chip, and what this does is actually puts it in range of hazards, which means that if he switches out and comes back in, Corsola gets a kill. So you heard it here first. But anyways, he doesn't have a reason to really stay in and Ice Beam me. It will get some chip damage, but he would lose his Silvally to the Gunk Shot, which I am going to go for. And going for the Parting Shot just allows him to kind of soften the blow and keep an extra sack fodder in the back. But here he goes into the Electivire, as I am going to hit him with the -1 Gunk Shot. It's still stab, it's still a Garbodor, so it's not weak by any means, and Electivire is not bulky, so at least not on the physical side, but it is going to take about half from that, as well as the hazards. Now here, I'm going to go into my Lando T and just style on him a little bit, because I know he's going to go for the electric move here, trying to get momentum with the Volt Switch and get up some hazard damage on my team, so I'm going to make the play into my Lando T. Now here, if he is offensive with the Hidden Power Ice, he would be able to do some damage to me. However, he is going to switch out, revealing that he is unable to knock me out. Because I don't remember what I do. Oh, I remember. I go for the U-turn here, because if he is Life Orb, that's completely fine. I have a free switch into my Sharpedo to get a kill. And if he's not Life Orb, I get a kill with U-turn regardless, or Momentum if he switches out. So he does sack off his Silvally to the hazards, so that's the first Pokemon out of the way. And here he is going to go into his Aerodactyl. Now this just kind of screams Ice Fang, so I'm going to get out of there and go into my Corsola. This also covers the defog, in case he does want to get rid of the hazards, I can just set them right back up. And I don't expect him to go for an Earthquake on my Lando T. So it felt like this was the safest play by far, covered pretty much every option. As he does reveal the Ice Fang, he's going to get hit by the hazard, or not the hazard, the Rocky Helmet, and that's going to put him just above range of Stealth Rocks. So he has one more switch in if he wants to switch out and come back in, but I am just going to go for the Scald here, as it's a no drawback play. His only real way to capitalize on my Corsola being in is to go into Tapu Fini, which he is going to do. But regardless, he's taking the hazard damage, he's taking the Scald, which basically just cancels out leftovers at this point. But it does net 1 or 2%, which is a little bit of chip, which is helpful. But yeah, here what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to stay in and Scald again, predicting him to just go for an attack, as it would bounce off of Corsola's hard body, and I would get off a little bit of chip, and I'll be able to just regen it off anyways. So I felt like there was no reason not to just go for the Scald here and get off a little bit more chip damage, putting it in range of maybe a Florges' Moonblast, Lando T's Earthquake after some leftovers, and Mega Sharpedo's Poison Jab, although I think it was already in range. It would have been close after some leftovers. But anyways, here I'm going to go into my Tangrowth. Another reason I stayed with Corsola was to get me the best switch into Tangrowth possible, because I can't take a Nature's Madness plus an Ice Beam, but I can take a Surf plus an Ice Beam. So getting my Tangrowth in on the potential Surf, which would have been his hardest move to hit Corsola at this point, allows me to tank a potential Ice Beam and go for the Giga Drain to knock him out, as well as Giga Drain kind of just gets a kill at this point, because Zygarde is not really a switch-in because it just gets 1v1. Electivire can't really take 2 Giga Drains, especially after hazards, and I do take any one hit from that thing. But anyways, he is going to go for the Taunt, which I find kind of interesting because what is a Tangrowth going to do versus a Fini? It's going to Giga Drain. So I don't really understand the Taunt too much. I guess he was kind of just grasping at straws there. Maybe he didn't have the Ice Beam and couldn't really touch me anyways. He wanted to taunt me so I couldn't Leech Seed. I don't know, but he has a very hard time versus this Tangrowth, as he is going to go into his Electivire. It's at about 30%, and I'm like, I can take any hit and kill him with a Giga Drain. So I'm going to take the Psychic. Even a Flamethrower would not be able to knock me out unless he was Life Orb, which the way he's been playing it, I don't think he is. But here he's actually going to live, revealing that he is an Assault Vest. I believe max HP Electivire if my calcs were correct. But anyways, I'm not going to risk losing my Tangrowth to a Flamethrower here, because he could potentially just be saving that in the back, or the Psychic plus Flamethrower, as a single Flamethrower wouldn't knock me out, so he could have just bluffed not having it, go for the Psychic into the Flamethrower and knock me out. I'm going to go into my Lando T scouting that. But here he's actually going to reveal he doesn't really have the Flamethrower, so he's just going to go for Psychic again. It's going to do very little damage, and here, I know if he has the Hidden Power Ice, he's going for it here. He's not going for the Electric move, no way. So I'm going to go make the pivot out into my Mega Sharpedo. And if he doesn't have Hidden Power Ice, Psychic is his best move to hit Lando anyways, so I'm immune to that. And you're going to see he does go for the Psychic. So that's pretty nice. Get my Mega Sharpedo in for free. I'm able to Mega Evolve, go for the Crunch, knock out the Electivire with this nice animation. And Mega Sharpedo is in a very solid position right now, as the only thing it can't straight OHKO is the Zygarde 50%, and because I am not the frail regular Sharpedo, I am a Mega Sharpedo, I do have enough bulk to take a hit from the Zygarde, and he doesn't know that I don't have Ice Fang, so here his play is to hope for an Extreme Speed crit. So I can take the Extreme Speed here, and he's going to go for it, and I don't actually have the Ice Fang, but I do have the Crunch, and Crunch is going to be able to 2-hit KO this Zygarde 100% of the time. As you can see, it did well over half, and I'm out of range of health where the next Extreme Speed will not be able to knock me out, so I'm able to just clean up this game with 4 kills with Mega Sharpedo. So that's pretty nice. Mega Sharpedo going 14-1 after this game. Obviously it's going to Aqua Jet the remaining 2 Pokemon, being Metagross at 2%, and Aerodactyl also at about 2%. Well, Aero's at like 5, maybe 7%. something like that. But anyways, Mega Sharpedo cleaning up, putting it at 14-1, putting it at MVP once again for week 6. Or was it? Yeah, it's week 6. But anyways, that's going to be the game versus RTK. He just couldn't break my defensive core. He definitely needed Mienshao with a Life Orb, or a Silvally with, I guess, play a Silvally a little better and not let it take damage to be able to break my defensive core. But anyways, Mega Sharpedo at 14-1 is actually 1 death ahead of the next up, which is going to be Lucario. But Lucario at 14-2. But Mega Sharpedo will continue at the MVP slot in the TBU. Yes, the TBU, the Battle Union. But anyways, that's going to be all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in week 7.